Present day. Present time.
Ladies and gentlemen, mostly men, welcome, hello, get ready for some discussions about mixed martial arts. Get ready. We're here for UFC 278, coming to us live from Salt Lake City in Utah, in the U.S. We've got 12 fights on the docket for the night, including our main event, a rematch between Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards, with a co-main event of Paulo Costa and Luke Rockhold, the former middleweight champion Luke Rockhold taking on former middleweight title contender Paulo Costa. But as you can see, we got a little bit of new stuff going on. Top right, Bonzo pick'ems. I mean, the bottom right, it wasn't working. We need to be a little bit more prominent about the fact that we're getting a lot of these pick'ems right, and people should be listening to us. Last week we were 8-4-1. Never thought we would be 8-4-1, but here we are. You know, we got a draw wrong. I don't even remember the fights I got wrong. It's been that long. But let's go on. Let's move on. We've got more important things to talk about. We've got a pay-per-view card to talk about. We've got some really good pay-per-view cards coming up. We've got UFC 278 that's coming up this week. We've got UFC 279. Nate Diaz, Khamzat Chimaev. That's going to be a fun one. We've got Usyk Joshua and boxing coming up tomorrow night as well. I mean, there's a lot going on, my friends. One championship, one on Prime too. So that's going to be really interesting. The first Amazon Prime show for one. But let's ignore that for now, and let's talk about some UFC. Before we get into it, there was some drama during the weigh-ins, which we will talk about during the breakdown of that fight. Almost everyone has made weight. That means the championship fight is locked in. So is the co-main event. But there was some drama out of Paulo Costa's camp. And unfortunately, a women's flyweight match between Miranda Maverick and Shanna Young was scheduled to take place. But unfortunately, Young was hospitalized while weight cutting issues. And we are hoping that she has a speedy recovery. Moving right along to our first bout, though, let's get right into it. Prelims, 125 flyweights. Flyweights are fun. Flyweights are technical. We've got Victor versus Daniel Da Silva. Victor was originally set to face Jake Hadley, but Hadley had to pull out due to an injury. Both men are coming off of losses. Victor is coming off a split decision loss to Carlos Hernandez at Fight Night Makhachev vs. Green, which was a few months ago, if you'll remember. Whereas Da Silva is coming off of 2 losses, which were a KO and a submission. Victor is the slight favorite here, and I think that I'd have to agree with that. He's had some great fights in the LFA and as well as on Dana White's Contender Series. And yeah, I just think that he wins here. So I'm going with Victor Altamirano in the first fight. This is where things get a little bit difficult. We got a bantamweight matchup. Our second fight, Perrin. Oh goodness, this is I'm so sorry for butchering some of these names. But the Mongolian murderer, well, we'll call him that. Orekleng, I'll go with that, versus the Joker, Perrin. Perrin is a Dana White's Contender Series alumni, but he's lost on the show. Orekleng is a UFC alumni with 3 fights under his belt, and he's coming off a finish win in his most recent fight. I'm just going to call him Mongolian Murder for moving on. This fight's kind of touted as being near even, and I can agree with that logic. They're both... It's really tough to call, you know. The Mongolian Murder is coming off of 2 losses, and that's in front of a live crowd. And I know that this is weird MMA fan logic, but one of those losses was on an Usman undercard as well. I don't know why. I feel like lightning's going to strike twice. I don't think that this guy's prepared to fight in person, and he's an apex fighter. You get some of those sometimes, unfortunately, but like, we'll see. I think the fact that he's Chinese might get him booed as well by the conservative Utah crowd. So I see Perrin kind of winning this fight here just because he gets rattled. The Mongolian murderer, and Perrin wins here. I think it's going to be a big upset win for him if Perrin wins. Moving on, we have Amir Albazi versus Francisco Figuero. Yes, this is the older brother of Davison Figueiredo. But I think everybody's going to have their eyes on Amir Albazi. He's the heavy favorite in this fight. He's got an exceptional and intense ground game. He's an unbelievably skilled fighter. I can see this fight going the distance, but I do really see Amir being the one who kind of leads and dictates the fight. I think it's going to be very technical. I think it's going to be on the mats, and I think that's going to upset a lot of fans. And I think, unfortunately, for a lot of people, there are a couple of these fights where we have some wrestlers going at it, and their entire game plan is going to be wrestling. And Amir Albazi and Francis Figuero are both going to be trying for that. I think Amir's a little bit better standing up, but I think Francisco gives him a lot of trouble on the ground. I don't think he gives him enough trouble to make it competitive, and I think Amir wins it. AJ Fletcher versus Angelusa. AJ took a massive step up in competition when he faced Matthew Sellersberger, and in doing so, he lost his perfect record. He was 9-0. He's now 9-1. On Saturday, he's facing Angelusa, who's coming off of losses in his UFC fights, but wins in other promotions. Both fighters are looking to get right back on track here. Lucie has the longer reach, so Fletcher's going to try and get in close to get to getting close to get off any meaningful offense. And the real question is, has AJ Fletcher learned from the loss? I think a lot of the times when a fighter who's perfect loses, we'll get to our next fighter, we have a lot of concerns and questions about whether they'll be able to kind of bounce back. This is his first fight back since the Matthew Sellersberger fight. And so I expect Lucie to try and come out aggressive and set the pace early with his jab. So he's going to really try and utilize his jab early on to establish that range and keep AJ Fletcher at that range the entire fight. He's not going to want AJ to try and, get his wrestling off and try and throw him to the ground and really take it from there, really, and try and finish the fight. Because that's where AJ really excels, is on the ground. I think this one, though, it's a tough one. This one's a really tough one because I think both guys really are looking for a win here, and I think both guys have the skills to really, I think, hurt the other one. I think Lucie can really bother Fletcher with a jab and really bother him for all 3 rounds of this fight, and I think AJ Fletcher, if he takes Lucie to the ground and can hold him down there, he can really work on his lackluster cardio and probably get the finish. Moving on, I was just talking about a fighter, who loses and they have an opportunity really to change who they are and how they are, and that's Sean Woodson. He's a fantastic fighter who, this fight's going to make the fans happy, I guess is the best way to put it. They've both got great hands. They both have great speed at 145. They both vary up their striking, meaning that they're not just going to stand there and throw hands. They're going to throw in knees. They're going to throw in elbows. They might even throw in some spinning stuff too. So expect a really fun back and forth fight between these two, but I think the taller Sean Woodson and his reach is going to really help him against Aldana. I think he's going to be able to put the jab on him early, and I think he's going to be able to land some meaningful offense that makes Aldana respect him. He might even drop him, I think, in the first round with a jab. But I think that Saldana might be able to recover, and it'll take a really good combination from Woodson later on within the fight, possibly in the second round, to get the finish. But I think that Sean Woodson wins this fight. Moving on to Jared Gordon and Leonardo Santos. Both fighters are coming off of losses. Santos is coming off of 2 finished losses, however. A TKO and a submission loss to Grant Dawson and Clay Guida. Gordon has also lost to Grant Dawson. And while the older, Leonardo has the reach advantage, the age difference I think is massive. I don't think the cardio or the chin is there for Leonardo, and I think that Jared Gordon should not have any trouble getting the win here. I have Jared Gordon winning this fight. Especially in a 155 that's competitive. It's way too competitive. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink of water. You should too. Drink some water. No sponsors from any corporations here. Just some natural water. Last fight of the prelim cards, Marcin Tybura heavyweight fight versus Alexander Romanov. This is a good one. Romanov is perfect. He's 14th. Tibura is 11th. Romanov is so impressive in this heavyweight division, but he's taking on a heavyweight contender in Marcin Tybura. I feel as though Romanov's taking a massive step up in competition. Tybura is coming off of a loss of the former M1 champ in Alexander Volkov, who's a very highly ranked fighter within the division. And we know that he can compete against some of the guys at the very top of the division. But back to Marcin Tybura and Romanov, I think that, the year-long delay, it hasn't taken Tybura away from the top 15. And, he's facing off Romanov, who's coming off of some impressive wins and finishes against guys like Chase Sherman and Jared Vandera. But I don't know. There's just something about this fight that I'm not too sure. I think there's going to be real fireworks in this fight. I think that this one's a real tough one to pick, despite the fact that there is a bit of a slight favorite towards Romanov. I'm just getting this weird gut feeling that Tybura might, just land something on him when Romanov goes in for the shot and he just catches him and he puts him to sleep. I think that Romanov is going to really try his hand here at his wrestling and try and get the finish against Tybura. And I think that Tybura has been practicing against that, and I feel like he might catch him. He's going to catch him with something and he's going to put him to sleep. That's just my feeling on this one. But this one really, in my opinion, is a toss-up. If you're trying to be logical, I would go with Romanov. But if you're listening to your gut, I would go with Tybura. Moving into, and sorry, to make it very clear, I'm going with my gut in this one, and I'm going with Tybura. All right, moving right along, we've got Tyson Pedro versus Harry Hunsucker. This is, I'm going to be very blunt, a rather one-sided looking fight to me. Tyson Pedro suffered some big losses against some heavier competition at 205. OSP and Shogun are the names that come to mind, but those fights were years ago, and we'll talk about that coming up. In this fight, I'll be blunt, kind of seems like a gimme for Tyson. I think that this fight was kind of set up with the expectation that he's gonna just go in there and get the finish. And that's kind of what I expect here. I kind of expect Tyson to go in there and get the finish. Harry hasn't had any luck in the UFC, and I believe every single UFC fight he's been in, he's been KO'd in. So, yeah, I expect Tyson Pedro to get the easy one here. Okay, another main event fight that I don't really understand. I'm going to be blunt here. These two fights, I don't really understand why they're main card fights compared to some of these. Marcin Tybura versus Alexander Romanov, it's understandable why this fight needs to be the main event of the prelims. You need to draw someone in. But, move Amir Albazi and Francisco Figueiredo, move them up. Move this Tyson Pedro fight down, and then, move the Sean Woodson and Luis Saldana fight up as well, and move Lucie Pudilová versus Yana Wu down. Because, again, no offense to these two fights, but, I do not, for the life of me, think that they're going to be more interesting than these two fights. I think that for fans, this is going to be a really technical and fun fight if you're into wrestling and BJJ, and you'll really enjoy this fight. And then this fight is just two 170 guys that are going to really throw hands. And I know that's not the fight that I said, but you could easily go, this would be my third option replacement, but this is the fight. This featherweight fight between Sean Woodson and Luis Saldana, I would move this fight up and move these two fights down. Move Lucie to where Amir Al-Bazi fight is, and then move the Tyson Pedro fight to where, the Sean Woodson Luis Saldana fight is. Because again, you're trying to build towards the pay-per-view, right? But I digress. I'm somebody that likes guys who have the technical ability to show that, not just in the striking. I know fans mostly only look for striking. I don't. But going on, I don't care about this fight. Women's bantamweight, Yanan Wu's coming off of 3 losses, so that's why this fight's considered a toss-up. This is Lucie's first fight in the UFC. I'm assuming Yanan Wu is going to come out aggressive. If she doesn't come out aggressive, then I think that Lucie is just going to walk through her. I frankly don't give a shit about this fight. I'm going with Lucie. Yeah, look at the fights we have following this. We have Jose Aldo versus Merab we have Paulo Costa versus Luke Rockhold, and you have Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards. We have three like gangbuster fights immediately after, and we have to sit through what amounts to, just a walkthrough. This guy's walking through this guy, and then she's like, for whatever reason, probably the most boring fight of the year is a main card fight. And I know it's going to be a boring fight of the year. I know it is. But I digress. I'm going to just put it out of my mind. Excuse me. That's what I think about the fight. It's a burp. I go on to a fight I care about. Jose Aldo versus Mirab. This is instant classic written all over it. This is going to be 3 rounds of fun. Jose Aldo is a bona fide Hall of Famer. He's taking on the rising superstar of Merab. He is trying to tear up the rest of this bantamweight division and make his way to the title. Aldo's making a resurgence in his career as of late. He's faced some extremely tough competition and got some wins against guys like Chito Vera, who we saw in UFC San Diego, and Rob Font as well, who we've seen recently. And again, Aldo's looked really good against him. He's also looked really good in the title fight against Petr Yan. That was a good fight. The only part of that fight that was not good from Jose Aldo was the last round where he just got caught, and then for the entirety of the round, he just got beat up, it is what it is. And now he's really facing a top-level wrestler in Mirab, and I think that Mirab's game plan is very obvious. He's going to take Jose Aldo down, and I think he's going to beat on him for 3 rounds. And I'm going to be blunt. I see him doing that. Jose Aldo's good. Jose Aldo's very good. Jose Aldo's been very good at bantamweight, coming down from 145. But Jose Aldo's also aging. I see the younger Mirab just being a little bit faster and really, with the wrestling, putting it on Jose Aldo for all 3 rounds and really making it miserable for him. I have Mirab winning this fight. Co-main event time. The return of former middleweight champion Luke Rockhold. No idea why it says lightweight here, or light heavyweight here. Oh, right, because both guys last fought at light heavyweight. Never mind. This is at middleweight, though, so both guys made 185, or rather the 185 limit, so no questions there. Luke is coming off a 3-year layoff. He had losses to Yoel Romero, Jan Blachowicz, and Michael Bisping. Don't be fooled, though. He did have a win in between that. I believe in between Yoel Romero and Jan Blachowicz. I could be wrong about that. Let's look it up. It was... Yeah. So he beat David Branch, and then... so it was before Yoel Romero. My apologies. He faced Yoel Romero, unfortunately. And Jan Blachowicz, and got knocked out in both of those. So it's taken a 3-year layoff. Paulo Costa similarly lost to Marvin Vettori in a fight which was scheduled for 185, but Paulo could not make it. He ballooned to 205 and had serious problems even then, and he just looked terrible in that fight. And then in the fight against Israel Adesanya, he looked horrible as well, and he got knocked out. He's still incredibly tough, though. He's still got incredibly heavy hands, and there's a reason why he's the odds-on favorite against Luke Rockhold. Most people don't think that Luke has the chin here, and that Luke, has serious problems being able to really do anything here in this fight. And I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of agree with him. I have Paulo Costa winning this fight. But I said earlier when we started this recording that there was something interesting about the weigh-ins, and that was when Paulo Costa made his way out. He had made mention in a tweet that USADA at 6 a.m. had shown up to his weight cut demanding his blood. Now, I understand that USADA has a job to test any fighter, but USADA also needs to understand that the things that they are asking are unbelievably unreasonable. USADA needs to understand that giving someone blood while they're massively cutting weight, not a regular dehydration, because they're technically, as an individual, you can fast before blood is drawn. There's no problem with that. But what these guys are doing, what these men and women are doing when they're getting ready for these fights, is not a normal, dehydration period. They are drastically dehydrating themselves to a level that is, at many points in time unbelievably unhealthy and can have serious long-term ramifications as well as just general ramifications on those individuals. So when Paulo Costa, made a tweet pointing this out, he has every right to be upset at USADA for showing up while he's performing his weight cut, demanding his blood. He has every right to be upset about that. And he made that very well known, and I think that USADA deserves to be called out for that because that is ridiculous. That is unbelievably unsafe. And beyond just that, we need to also think about the ramifications on the weight cut. For those who are unaware, you're typically told after your blood is drawn not to exercise at least for an hour or two. Well, Paulo needs to cut weight so that he can fight the next day. Again, I understand if you want to give him some time to rehydrate after he's, done his weigh-in, but while he's doing his weigh-in is ridiculous. It's unfathomably unfair. It's unacceptable. And just shame on USADA for that. Shame on them. That's completely unacceptable. Just going back to the fight though, Paulo Costa, again, I have him winning this fight. He's got really heavy hands. He's knocked out guys like Uriah Hall, who's known for their toughness, as well as former champion Johnny Hendricks. He also has a win against Yoel Romero. So it's not like Paulo is, some nobody, nothing bad guy. He has skills, he has heavy hands, and he has the ability to put Luke to sleep, and I can see him doing that potentially. Luke has to be very careful here, and Luke has to rely heavily on the wrestling and his foot movement and footwork here in this fight. If he can really, take it to a decision, I'll be unbelievably amazed. I really will. And I'll be even more shocked if he can get the win and the upset here against Paulo. But I think the reason why Paulo is the favorite is because those heavy hands will put Luke to sleep. Main event time. I said it in the last fight. I think it was 277. I'm going to say it again here. You haven't seen it? Pause the video right now. Don't listen. Go watch it. Go watch Usman versus Leon Edwards 1. That was 7 years ago. But go sit down. Go watch it. I'll wait. You're back? All right. Leon Edwards, what more is there to say about him? He's a changed fighter from those 7 years. So is Kamaru Usman. But Leon Edwards is a bit of an interesting fellow. He's had a rather long streak at welterweight, but his streak at welterweight has been over an extended period of time. He's got wins against Nate Diaz, but that was, 2 years after a layoff against RDA, Gunnar Nelson, and then a year layoff against, Cowboy. And so he has a win streak against some of these names like Vicente Luque, and Gunnar Nelson. But these guys have gotten better, Bilal Muhammad, even the fight that he's had against him, that ended in an eye poke, a very bad eye poke from Leon. That fight was never ran back. And he had a fight against Nate Diaz in which, as you all know, in that 5th round, while he was winning, he got slapped once and he almost got knocked out. That's unbelievably alarming if Nate Diaz can slap you and almost knock you out. Because on the other side of things, you have the pound for pound champion. The man who is, without a shadow of a doubt, arguably, in my eyes, one of the best welterweights of all time. You have a man who's knocked out Colby Covington and then beat him in a decision again. You have a man who's beaten Jorge Masvidal in a decision and then knocked him out. And then you have a man who was knocked down by his teammate, Gilbert Burns, and then he came back and knocked him out. And then you have the complete and utter domination to win the title in the first place. Usman's beaten the best. There's a reason why he has that title. It's because he's the best. There are few challengers left for him to face. I think the most obvious one after Leon is Khamzat Chimaev. I think he needs to walk through Nate Diaz first, which is, I think, a foregone conclusion. And then it's Kamaru Usman. But, Leon, I think, poses a very interesting stylistic matchup for Kamaru insofar as he's 2 inches taller, but he doesn't have the reach advantage. Kamaru can pop him with the jab, but Leon has that kicking background that will really play an advantage for Kamaru. or for Leon against Kamaru. He's got to really chop at those legs, and then he's got to bring those legs up. He's got to eat up at Kamaru's body, and then he's got to make his way up. I think question mark kicks are going to really help Leon, and throwing that at the end of his combinations with the jabs will be really beneficial. The main thing he has to worry about, though, despite having an unbelievably crisp 1-2, is the counter of Kamaru Usman, because Kamaru Usman is probably one of the best counter punchers in the welterweight division. I mean, the knockout of Jorge Masvidal was a counter punch. You know, with Gilbert Burns, he kept knocking him down based off of his jab, and then he finally was able to put him away. And I think a lot of this growth for Kamaru Usman, who is a wrestler, I think there's no one that's going to deny that Kamaru Usman as a welterweight was a wrestler. That's how he beat Tyron Woodley. He dominated him via his wrestling. But how has he since gotten better? And there's only one reason for that: Trevor Whitman. Trevor Whitman is, without a shadow of a doubt, the most important person in Kamaru Usman's life right now. Without a shadow of a doubt. That man has completely taken him to the next level. Beyond just what I see as, you know, providing him with the striking ability that he's never had before, I think that he's worked on his footwork. I think he's worked on his timing. I think he's worked on his fundamentals too under Trevor Whitman to such a degree that it's just undeniable at this point. And I think that we're really going to see a finish here. We're going to see a finish in this fight. It's not going to be Leon Edwards. It's going to be Kamaru Usman in the third round finishing Leon Edwards. And I say the third round for one particular reason. Trevor Whitman as a coach is a reactionary coach. Trevor Whitman likes to watch what his opponents does. He likes to let his fighters fight, and then he likes to watch what his opponents does in the first round, the second round, and then give relevant advice to help his fighters build. You can look at Justin Gaichi versus Tony Ferguson. In the first round, Justin was being very aggressive with his punches. What did he tell him? He told him, slow those punches down. And when Justin did, he was hitting his mark far more and able to put that damage onto him. Expect something similar in this fight too. Expect Kamaru to be getting off some decent offense against Leon. Leon will be getting off some good offense too, but Trevor will pick up on some slight bit of a tell that Leon has with his striking. He'll tell Kamaru to pounce on it, and Kamaru will, and he'll counterpunch him and put him to sleep. And the reason why I think that is that it's not just a combination of Trevor Whitman's high IQ, high fight IQ. It's also a matter of Kamaru Usman's willingness to listen. I think that Kamaru Usman has shown that he's willing to put in the work when he knows that the results reflect the advice that's coming his way. He respects Trevor Whitman and the advice that he's getting from him to listen to him. So when Trevor Whitman is saying, hey, look, give me a 1-2, but start at the body with a kick first and then go in, you know, that's what Kamaru's going to do. There are some guys that, you know, they can hear what their coach is saying and then they'll do the complete opposite. And we see it numerous times, you know. We'll listen to guys in the corner like Saif Saud. There are some times where Saif Saud will be screaming in the corner because his fighters don't listen. And that's nothing against Saif Saud. Sometimes it's a fighter thing. Sometimes it's a coach thing. Sometimes it's a fighter thing. Sometimes it's a mixture of both. But with Kamaru Usman and Trevor Whitman, it's like a match made in heaven. Kamaru Usman just gels completely with Trevor Whitman and his team up in Denver, and it shows. He's looked fantastic. He's looked phenomenal. And again, don't get me wrong. Leon Edwards has improved. Leon Edwards looks fantastic. But Leon Edwards is not Kamaru Usman. And Kamaru Usman is going to show why he is the pound-for-pound best and why he's the welterweight champion. He's going to get a third-round finish, and he's going to put an end to any conversations about Leon Edwards being champion. So just going through everything very quickly, I've got Victor winning the first fight. I've got Jay Perrin winning the second fight. I've got Amir Albazi winning the third fight. AJ Fletcher winning the fourth fight. Sean Woodson winning the fifth fight. Jared Gordon winning the sixth fight. That's a tongue twister. Marcin Tybura winning the seventh fight. Eighth fight going to Tyson Pedro. Lucie Pudilová winning the ninth fight. Merab Dvalishvili winning the 10th fight. I've got Paulo Costa winning the 11th fight. And I've got Kamaru Usman winning the 12th fight. Seems like I've put all my eggs into one side of the bracket, but to be quite honest, I think that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you get some enjoyment out of this fight breakdown for UFC 278. I hope you guys enjoy.